Again, thank you very much for coming. My name is Darryl Sladden. I'm at Cisco. I'm a product manager. Been there for a long time. Right now, I've been a while the product manager in our location spaces, our location area of our wireless network. And so what we've really been doing is focusing on a pretty dramatic change that's just happened recently. Well, the last time I talked at Tech Field Day, we were just about to announce what we're doing now, and now we've done it, which is sort of rebranding and creating a new concept called our location as a platform, which is now called Cisco DNA Spaces. And so with the acquisition last year of a company called July Systems that provided us a network-based cloud, we were able to take a lot of the individual components that we previously had. So we had lots of great location mathematical engines, right, that ran on-prem on a server. We had lots of great cloud services. We had lots of great APIs. Well, it was pretty disjointed. What we really focused on was with DNA Spaces trying to put that all together. And so why were we really trying to do that? Because it's been this sort of dramatic shift in a lot of industries, right? Digitization, really understanding what's going on with your network, what's going on in your physical space, has been the thing that unlocked a huge amounts of value, right? If every retailer could understand as well in the physical space as well as Amazon does in your digital space, they would have a lot better chance of becoming, the people who can compete against Amazon, because Amazon knows how long did I spend in baby diapers, how long did I spend in outdoor furniture. But when you're in the store, they don't have that visualization or information about you. At this conference for Cisco Live, we need to know, are you a person who spends more time at DevNet or the Hub? We offer Japanese food and Italian. What's the difference for people hanging out? Where do people like to hang out? As we know more about this conference through digitization, we can offer better conferences. So this sort of digitization of indoor space applies lots and lots of industries. But one of the important things is it really has to happen at scale. And so what we've been finding is that there's always this sort of indoor digital blind spot, right? Whether it's Uber outdoors, knowing your GPS location, where do most people gather to pick up cars, or other information that is available and traditionally from companies like that provided GPS mapping, so they really understood what was going on outdoors. That indoor space at scale hasn't been available. And so what you find out is there's this limited visibility in your indoor space. So when we ran these conferences 5 years ago, we'd kind of, gut feel know what area you was in more than others. But in order to really know what's going on, we can start to take advantage of this giant data feed that we're getting from the network. So, and that's really about can your network deliver more than just connectivity? It's this giant feed that we get from the network. So that indoor visibility, when you decide to use your passport, your phone as a passport, of course fully compliant, meaning if they decide I don't want to do it, I say nope to those terms and conditions, I'm not included. But if I do, there's great applications. And some applications that you might have seen at the Cisco Live app here are the mapping application and Find My Friends. You can do a Find My Friends application based on, I'm going to share my location with a small group of people, and they'll all be able to know just during this conference where I am. It's a great way of being able to take advantage of the network, adding something more than just connectivity on top of your network. And so what we've done with DNA Spaces is package this into sort of 3 levels: See, Act, and Extend. And the idea is there's always been lots of regular IT use cases, and those are all part of C. And then we've got some additional API-based use cases that are an Act and Extend. And so the idea with C is, I will show a demonstration of all of this stuff, is that you're able to unlock the value that you normally had with IT. So IT always used to know, where were people when they complained about Wi-Fi? Where are my rogue devices? Who is broadcasting somebody who is broadcasting Cisco Live 2019, but that's not really Cisco Live 2019. All those regular use cases are part of our C, as well as using the basic APIs to understand where devices are. Act is really the area that we focus most on, which has been adding an enterprise level kind of if this then that level on top of it. So Act, we can create these rules that can be triggered in the hundreds of thousands and millions based on our cloud that can say, if this device leaves this area, if a device enters an area, if a temperature alarm is triggered, if a person comes back 4 or 5 times, we can create these very sophisticated rules. And that's what our Act engine is all about, is taking not only this network feed that a lot of the programmers are saying, yeah, I know I could do this myself, but yeah, I wish I could hand this off to somebody else to be able to do this. So we've provided in this one purchase against your API, against your APs, you would just buy this one service, and now I have a whole set of engines that I can use. And then finally, what we're trying to focus on with the Extend is opening up the concept of a location app store. Something that's never existed before in the industry, kind of like, and we're basing a lot on some of the success that Salesforce has had, and we've actually had some really good, interesting meetings with them, to be able to say, Salesforce took a CRM data that was always disjoint, lots of different ways of doing it, and now I've got a centralized customer relationship information, and then I built applications that are on top of it, whether it be marketing applications, whether it be applications about how I can do service to my customers, taking a regular set of, a standardized set of data and having third parties add applications on it has really been successful in the CRM world, and we're trying to bring some of that capabilities to the location world. So imagine that once I have a very standardized set of location data, I can start to provide this to multiple different vendors, whether it be Maze Map to be able to say I want to do an indoor wayfinding, whether it be Local Measure that says I want to do a sentiment analysis, whether it be Refinity that says I want to be able to do a which rooms are most utilized workspace analysis. There are lots of different verticals that need good location data, and right now it's always been, yep, got to go right back down to the individual stack to write that, and then the other company would go right back down to the stack to write that. And so what we're trying to do is each of those companies would come across to DNA Spaces. So you take your location data from your on-premises, point it at a trusted relationship with Cisco that you would have, and now you could be able to say, hey Cisco, I know you have a trust relationship with Refinity or Local Measure or Maze Map. Can you broker this location data so that when I say it stops, it stops. If it's GDPR compliant, if I say pull a MAC address out of the database, it's pulled out of all of your apps at a single place. If I want to be able to only give this person access for a short period of time, I can start to do that. So I can have a single place where I can create application rules that apply across multiple applications. And that's really the focus on our location app store, sort of Extend level. You know, really, we see a lot of business value in each of these areas, right? So in C, we're just going to improve the user experience, drive efficiencies, business decision making, and business impact, meaning the more I know about how many people have joined Wi-Fi, where they have, in a consistent manner, I can compare it across other networks. So the idea in web logs is there's great sort of well-defined metrics as how do I define a visit to a website? Now we can take a lot of that information against your physical space and have these well-defined metrics that everyone will use sort of these same metrics, and you can start to be able to compare them. And we can provide things like an industry average or an organizational average, and you can start to compare your sites across them. In ACT, it's really that there's a lot of business value in the idea of once I can interact with somebody, I can influence behavior, right? If I can say, hey, this is the third time you've joined Wi-Fi this week as a proxy for, this is the third time you've been here this week, hey, I want to be able to incent you to come back the fourth time by saying, hey, if you come back tomorrow, I'm going to give you a coupon for 20% off. Being able to do that on a one-off basis, there's lots of different ways of doing that, but being able to do that at scale, and we've been able to prove this because we already have 500,000 APs connected to this platform, being able to do that at scale for like 3,000 different locations, that's really the value that you start to see with DNA Spaces Act, that you can start to do these if this then that rules at very large scales that influence behavior and do things like influence and increase customer engagement and satisfaction, because I can understand, you know, what you're doing, you know, whether or not there's been a problem connecting, any sort of issues that you've previously have had. And then finally, the other part of the Extend is also into a lot of the enterprise integrations. So enterprise integrations have great set of integrations into, hey, this customer is connecting to this website this often, right? And so that they have a really deep understanding about your customer experience on the web, but they don't have a really great understanding of your experience as you physically go through a theme park or a hospital or any other areas, right? And so the idea here is if we can integrate with enterprise applications, we can start, whether it be like an Adobe application or Salesforce, if we can start to put really good location data into your CRM data, we can better understand those customers. So any questions about sort of our see, act, and extend? This is sort of the theory. I just wanted to start this presentation off with that, and then we'll go into the dips of the individual applications, and even some of the new hardware that we're going to be deploying to make this possible. Questions? So, well, we'll keep it going, and we'll see whether I can get some questions out of it. Because whoever asks the most questions will get some new hardware that we'll be showing off. And so I will be giving stuff away, both to the people on camera, and somebody on camera will get them, as well as somebody here in the audience. A couple of people here. So again, DNA Spaces, see, act, and extend. We're really focusing on scale. When we talk about scale, this is something that we've learned from the Meraki brethren, our WebEx brethren, July Systems that Meraki had talked about. Being able to do this at a very large scale is something that we've brought in-house with our acquisition of July, and being able to integrate and trigger hundreds of thousands or millions of individual interactions with these customers. And then, of course, having this as a 24/7 support. So if I've decided I put up my location engine and I've moved that on-premises location engine into the cloud, now my cloud is constantly calculating where locations are. If there's ever a problem with that, so I've had my on-premises APs, like there's an AP right there, Cisco Live, we're sending this data off to the cloud. Now the cloud can report back, hey, wait a second, there's an AP I haven't heard from for a while. Is there something wrong with that AP? So you can start to have a better 24/7 monitoring, because the network application that we're sending data to can also be aware that it should be receiving this data.
Just a quick question. Is public cloud mandatory, or do you offer this somehow that customer can host it in their own data center if they have regional, let's say, laws or something like that?
Yeah, good question. And so this one, we've leaned into public cloud. So this is Cisco is offering this in clouds in Europe and the US. You can decide which cloud you want to host it in the Amsterdam cloud or the US cloud, but it is, DNA Spaces is only offered as a cloud service and software as a service. So it's subscription only, cloud only. You pick your sort of world region that you're going to deploy this in. And we've done this really to focus on the speed of deployment, right? The installation script and on-premises solutions are great, and we've done that for a small component. So we've left the location engine would be the last thing that will still exist on premises, where you can make the choice to say, nope, I don't want to touch the cloud at all. I'll just leave a great location engine where we run some mathematical models that we've developed over the last 10 years as to the way of estimating the location of device based on RSSI signals. That model can be run either in the cloud at infinite scale or on your premises. But all of the additional applications are all cloud only.
Now that you mentioned cloud only, there are a few countries in Europe where you're not supposed to export personal data, and this is personal data, into the cloud that is hosted anywhere outside of that zone. So where do you have your cloud locations?
So our cloud locations are in Amsterdam and in US. And so for those countries that say, nope, I don't want to do it, we offer an on-premises box, and all of the applications that are on top of it, they just will not be able to play for that particular country, which will allow individuals in that country to write their own applications and things like that. But we offer a solution that is European hosted and a cloud service that offers for a lot.
Still not good enough for Switzerland.
Right, not good enough for Russia, right? And so we make a business decision as to whether or not to move put up a data center in Russia to do these applications. But we're trying to be able to do this as fast as possible, and we really lean into by doing this on the cloud.
Just a quick one here on when you designed this, I know Cisco's a US company, but we are here at Cisco Live Europe.
Yeah.
Do you have already something like this on the focus when you say, okay, if we design it in a cloud-only fashion, maybe we will not be able to deliver it, for example, to Russia, to Switzerland? Or is this something that came up later in the development process?
No, it really came up very early because we were GDPR compliant. That was one of the first things that we really focused on. How can we make this compliant? So we we had our lawyers go through a lot of different legislation as to what types of compromises we could make. And there were sort of positions of, if we put a mini data center in every country, what could we do? If we made this as an on-premise application where you put in your own cloud, what you can do? And we spent a lot of time weighing the cost versus the speed of that. And the compromise was a European data center that would apply to probably 78 to 80% of the countries, and a US data center and an Asia-Pac data center. We've also got the only validated solution for this in China. So it was actually really hard. We spent a lot of time getting a Chinese license, which is really, really hard, at a Chinese data center to be able to do a rules engine for digitizing things in China. So yeah, we did spend a lot of time doing it. It was, but we set to make some compromises on this.
So you said United States and Netherlands, I think, right?
Amsterdam, US, and China.
China.
Yes.
So APAC region is covering.
Well, APAC region, we have some customers who go out of the US, some customers that want to go out of China.
Based on?
Based on the individual customer decisions. Some of them are, yeah.
It will be just latency, so...
Yeah, it's often not just latency.
latency.
Yeah, yeah. There's where do I trust it? Where do I want to host it? Some of them actually, we have some customers that like the Amsterdam data center, regardless of it, because latency is not that important in some of these applications. If I send you a notification of a text, hey, welcome back, 250 milliseconds later, because that's the latency to get to Europe, doesn't really change the experience. Right, and that's one of the things that we're focusing on. If you do need, hey, we've got two forklifts that are going to collide into each other, we don't do that in the cloud. We say, no, that's an on-premises location engine. That's something that you're going to do separately. But if you want to be able to set an alarm that a temperature has gone over 70 degrees, moving that to an Amsterdam data center with 250 milliseconds latency has not been bad. So one of the other things that we focused on this, I said really again, I want to strangle myself if I say really again, has been a single pane of glass, so that we've seen that there's lots and lots of different cloud services. So we are been focused on trying to create a single place that you log on at DNA Spaces.cisco.com or DNASpaces.io, and then you can be able to get an overall view of what's going on in your network and see into these different types of applications, whether it be captive portal, engagement rules, operational insights, to be able to get the view of all of them across a single area. So overall, the way that this thing is being structured and what we're sort of announcing here at Cisco Live and being able to talk about is this new DNA Spaces unified location cloud. This location cloud is based on that. We can connect to any type of network infrastructure, including Meraki, which is our brethren, because the company that we're working a lot with as part of the acquisition, which is July, was one of the largest integrators on that. So they've used that extensive API. So we've got a really great experience with integrating and pulling data, whether it be the location data or the captive portals off of Meraki. And we can pull off old wireless Cisco existing networks. So we built a cloud connector. So even if you've got wireless back down to wireless LAN controller 8.0 with some of those dang 1142 APs out there that's built like tanks and lasted way longer than they should have, you can still connect even that to DNA Spaces, right? Because we built effectively a translator. So the translator says, I'm going to speak on this leg the old NMSP protocol over port 16113 that was not protobus, it's a TLV encrypted language that only Cisco knew. And then on this other leg, I'm going to incorporate that into HTTPS over protobus so that we sort of translate from the old world to a cloud-enabled world. And that's what's called our cloud connector. And that allows us to connect all the way back to our oldest controllers. And then our newest controllers, some of the Catalyst 9800s, they what I'll call natively speak cloud, meaning they've got this great HTTPS engine that can create packets in an HTTPS 2.0 compliant method. It can have multiple streams with TCP ACK when I'm sending packets, when I'm sending some data out. I can send it simultaneously out on 5 different channels, wait for those acknowledgements to have a nice, highly scalable solution. That is native in the 9800s in iOS controllers 16.10 and 16.11. So that's sort of the new version of our Catalyst engines that have a very high speed and highly capable native web connection capability. And so for all the ones in the middle, we've got Meraki connectors, Catalyst connectors, and translators that get us there.
So I guess deploying this is no big deal because most of the stuff is cloud-based.
Yes.
What's the sales model in particular? How are the traditional system integration partners involved in this?
Yeah, so the traditional system integration partners will be able to pull all of the data that they need off of two different types of APIs. One is, again, this Firehose API. And so this Firehose API is something that we're talking about now. We're introducing it to new customers. And it is very similar to some of the concepts that we previously heard about, which is a atomic API, meaning you can ask it to restart. Hey, I missed your last 3 hours worth of data. Can you resend all of that? So that's one of the capabilities that's being added. As well as they can also do direct integrations with the components of the cloud. So they have the choice, either the partner API, where they get this restart capabilities, which is very effective, or they can do the traditional, I'm going to pull information from each of your individual components.
And I guess this is sold as sort of a subscription model.
Software as a service, 3, 5, 7-year licenses on a per AP per year basis. The big thing that we are doing there is you get all of this stuff. So when we talk about this, you'll get every single one of the capabilities inside of Act when you buy this. So whether you need it or not, whether you're ready to consume it or not is maybe a better way to say it.
We'll charge you for it, right?
We'll charge you for it. But the idea is we didn't want to be focused on these layering sort of, it's $2 to do this and $3 to do that and $4 to do this. Meraki has been very successful at saying, we're not going to start slicing every single little feature into additional cost. We understood what works well is you offer a package of features that become very compelling. And so we offered the package really at 2 levels, which is the C level, which is very minimal. It's actually included in any of the new modern licenses that you buy. Things like DNA Premier includes that level. And then the Act level, which is priced per AP per year basis, that allows you to add all of this functionality with a single SKU.
And if you add additional features in the future?
They'll all be in Act. We are not going to be licensing. As I said today in 2019 January, that's what I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty confident that we can talk about.
No pro license.
No adding a bunch of layered licensing on top of it. We're not going to. An Act Pro Super.
For the first 3 months.
So a couple of the ones that are coming in this Act level that we haven't completed are things like our BLE Manager. And our BLE Manager is what I want to talk about here today, one of the examples of something new. And so this is what we're introducing. This is a new USB dongle from Cisco. This goes into your 2800s or 3800s and adds a BLE radio. So something that we've been looking for a while has been all of our new APs, anything since 2017, our 4800s, our 1815s, they have native BLE radios. Meraki's been having native BLE radios for several years. Now, the 38s and 28s, which are a majority of a lot of networks, didn't have a BLE radio. This is the ability to add that BLE radio to that. So this BLE radio is both a transmit and receive radio, so it can transmit out a beacon, that you can do all kinds of great new custom applications that can say, I've detected this beacon, send a welcome message or help me with my indoor wayfinding. Or this can be a receive radio, so any asset tags. So if I have an asset tag, I can be able to detect this and be able to place the location of this. And so these are all cloud managed BLE radios that will be attached to your 38s and 2800s. Would anybody like one of these? Okay.
I don't have that access points.
Does anyone have any 2800s or 3800s? No? No 28s or 38s. Well, if anyone has any 28s or 38s, these are, or 1815s or 1810s, these are the dongle that you need to enable this new functionality inside of your network.
Is there any software update needed to make this?
You'll update to the latest software, and this would certainly be included as part of that update. So once you put this new dongle into a 2800 or a 3800, now you've taken that existing AP network and been able to add this new radio functionality. Nobody wants one?
Hopefully, some of the listeners.
Okay.
Place, yeah.
So we were talking a little bit about some of the capabilities that you'll start to see with these ideas. And so there's key use cases that we think applies. And we've posted these slides to make them available. We think that across almost any industry, better understanding what people and what things are doing in that physical space will make your business more efficient, right? Whether it be education, so we've been working with companies like Degree Analytics or Involvio, companies like Sensible Business Sciences, and they do things like, hey, this student has been on class Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. All of a sudden, he's been missing class 4 or 5 days in a row. They build machine learning models that say, if a person who is previously always in class starts missing class, what's the projected likelihood of this person succeeding or failing in class? And so it's very interesting models that they can start to take advantage of, because students almost always associate to the wireless. They can start to do attendance if it becomes mandatory in some places, where you can say, if you bring your device to the class, we can auto-create attendance lists. And so these things have been very successful in some of the U.S. universities, especially the U.S. universities are a little bit different than the ones in Europe. A lot of them are for-profit, so they really want students to pass, right? They really don't want you to drop out. So they use methods of being able to have a counselor interject if you've missed class for a couple of weeks to say, hey, are you sure you still want to be in this?
Even if the students don't continue, he can pass. It depends on the student as well, right?
Right, so it's only one thing. All it is one signal to the counselor to say, hey, maybe you should reach out to this student. He's stopped coming to class, right? There might be a good reason to it.
It doesn't affect the success ratio of the student normally, right?
The student not coming to class in a lot of the U.S. universities has a big impact as to whether or not they are graduating. So think of these 4-year undergraduates, classes that are not the highest level academics. Is not so much a problem at a Stanford or MRT, but some of the mid-tier universities, that if a student stops coming to class, if they got somebody who reached out and contacted them, said why, and helped them get back to class, there's a much higher chance of them graduating.
On the other hand, I see people carrying backpacks of mobile phones into the classroom.
Yeah, whatever they can do to help them better learn in those classrooms. And some of the other places that have done really successful by digitizing their spaces have been, University of British Columbia uses this for an interesting use case where they decide when to turn on the HVAC system, when to turn on heating and air conditioning, because they know some buildings, if they follow the standard model, we'll warm the building at 7 a.m., we'll cool it off at 7 p.m., there's a lot of buildings that either start earlier, end earlier in the day. They are pretty much empty by 5, and if they were able to turn the air conditioning off 1 hour earlier, they were able to save a large amount of money. And so I use the Wi-Fi signature of devices associated in the building as a very good proxy to determine the occupancy, which then led to a reduction in the amount of air conditioning required. So there's a lot of interesting use cases.
Alone in your building. Your mobile
it's going to start to get cold.
Anymore. Everything goes off.
Well, but the building will save $1 million. The building is probably spending $10,000 to warm you.
So it's better for the environment.
Yeah, it's better for the environment. Maybe you shouldn't be alone. But there are a lot of interesting use cases like that. Intuit here in Europe has done a great job helping to view footfall traffic and be able to better understand things like sporting events, whether the person who purchased the ticket really came, right? Are they selling your season tickets? Are they actually coming? A lot of to make change how I market to work.
Oh, statistical multiplexing, so they can sell to many people now, and simultaneously they will not come. So.
Right. So even if I used to, instead of just selling to the season ticket holders, start to everybody else.
20,000 spaces, they can sell now maybe million guys.
Yeah.
So maybe just a comment. It's not really related to technology, so I'll try to keep it short. I think that as a technology provider, what you're doing is great, but I think as a society, we may run into a problem. We are a two-speed society, people which have electronic devices and which are digitized and which can benefit from all of the things, and other categories of people who are maybe not so fortunate in life and who are left behind, So maybe that's a gap or a divide that we need to kind of figure out how to kind of, let's say, compress or
Bridge
eliminate,
that,
right?
Cisco
Bridge the
acting
gap.
of the bridge.
yeah.
Oh, you're reading the marketing material. But I think that's a really astute comment. Chuck Robbins was in Davos this week, really talking about how still a third of the world isn't digitized. They live on $2 a day. How are we going to be able to help that? And I think that's going to be really something that's important.
It may not make sense now because these things are emerging or we're just starting, but as we go into smart cities, and I think that's some of the messaging that you've been pushing in the past years with IoT and all, I think we may really reach that point where we really need to do something about it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that digital design, what do we do for that digitization of the rest of the population? Is it everything from subsidized smartphones as a human right, right? Like they were talking about the internet's a human right, or is it going to be something where only a certain amount of things can be done in a digital fashion? I think it's a lot of great thoughts on that. Going back, we were talking about that 24/7 monitoring. Because this is a cloud service, we're able to offer a very extensive monitoring of the system, making sure that the system's always up and running. We're able to be able to have a set of administrators that are always watching the network and make sure it receives the data that's required. And there's really four things that I wanted to focus on with DNA Spaces. One is speed of activation. So we've actually created a guide that is at dnaspaces.cisco.com that in 4 steps you can get any network connected. Like we were talking about how easy it is to connect the network, whether it's a Meraki or a Catalyst network, that speed and ease of activation is something that's historically not been Cisco's strong point, right? Being able to get a controller upgraded or being able to get to a new set of capabilities hasn't been something that's easy. And so what we have been focusing on with DNA Spaces is in 4 steps you can get any type of network connected. So that's one of our main components. The second one is to create this industry standard data, right? So that as we receive location data, meaning this device has been here, seen by a probe, then it's no longer seen. How do we define that? Do we define that visit as, if he's seen for one, if he only gets one probe packet, is that defined as a visit? Does it have to be a certain number of probe packets? So we've defined sort of a standard metric that a device is seen. Once he's gone for 3 hours from a network, that's when we close the visit. If it doesn't come back within 3 hours, we can start a new visit. We've defined these sort of standard metrics that we will apply across a bunch of different industries so that you can start to do comparisons of your location data. So really focusing on reliability, accuracy, data normalization. So whether it be Meraki network or a Cisco network, we can receive the location updates and normalize all the data to be able to say this is how we define a visit, and then create these industry standard metrics so you can start to compare, hey, what's the average frequency of a person coming back to my network versus a person coming back to a competitor's network in the same industry. And all this is done with data compliancy, privacy and compliancy, meaning if I decide to opt out and say, no, I don't want to connect it, either on my terms and conditions on my connect or any other method, once I opt out, I'm not included in any of these data sets. The third is a very standard way of doing these behavior metrics. How many of your locations performing against a key metric? How are your locations doing relative to each other? Which metrics are relevant as to frequency of visits, returning visits, all of this data, what's particularly relevant. And then if I did some big event, let's say I added signage, or if I changed a routing, I can do an impact analysis. How were my metrics before that? I do something, how are my metrics after that? So I can start to understand, very much like you do A/B testing on a web, I could do A/B testing in my physical space and be able to understand when I change my physical space, is that, are there changes in people's behaviors before and after that? And most of these things have always been done in a sort of gut feel basis, right? I kind of, the sign looks better over there. I think people are going to be more appreciative of it, right? Or, I think let's change the flow of this part of the store. And it's been just sort of gut feels as to whether it's working. What we hope to do with this is be able to say, hey, you can use some type of standard metric to count the way people have either spent time or repeat visitors, and use that to help you compare items before and after. And fourth is really the big thing is our data integration into enterprise-wide systems, whether it be loyalty systems that can say, there's a great set of loyalty systems that every big enterprise has, that has a CRM number that says, hey, are you a hotel loyalty member, or are you a loyalty member at a theme park or even the grocery stores. But your physical, and when your loyalty member often understand what you do on the web if you log in with your loyalty number, but they don't necessarily understand where you go in a store. They understand what you do at the checkout because they have what you bought, but they don't understand where I actually went during a particular store. So if you can start to integrate your in-store experience with your CRM data, I can better understand, oh, this is a customer that goes to 4 different Nike stores before buying something. This is a customer that spends a lot of time browsing this particular area of the store. And so those are the 4 key components that I wanted that are important about DNA Spaces. That ease of activation, standard data, business metrics, and integration. And let's take a look at some of these items. So I'm going to be sitting down and doing some of these demos. All right, first of all, one of the dashboards that we've got here, this is our sort of our overall dashboard. This shows you all of the information, all of the different networks that we currently have pointed to our DNA Spaces cloud. And so right now we have over 22,000 different locations where APs are placed, and a total of over 500,000 APs that are sending northbound data into our cloud. And that means our cloud has processed over 140 billion updates. So for machine learning, a good data set starts at 1 billion. We have 140 billion records. So we're able to use this to do great sets of K-factor analysis to say what's an anomaly when we do a location detection, because we can understand what things group together well and what things are outliers. We can understand the different device behavior from an Android device when it sends a probe, and then stops sending a probe in a network. We can understand how devices roam between different access points, because every time there's a roaming event, we get a new data location update. So we have a really great set of data to be able to do some of our predictive as well as descriptive analysis on. And so when we say we use our machine learning techniques to help you define what a visit is, this means we've gotten all these location updates, and we could help us find anomalies in the data set. A couple of the ones that we do automatically now are things like determination automatically of what MAC addresses are belong to employees, most likely, and which ones are shoppers, by saying, oh, an employee is likely to be there 8 hours a day, X period, longer period of time. Shoppers are more likely to be there for shorter periods of time interstitially. And so we can start to group people and make a guess that, hey, we think this is an employee that's using your guest Wi-Fi SSID because they're connected to your wireless 40 hours a week, things like that. So we have some great set of information that we can learn about this.
Female, male shopper, if we could identify, would be nice.
Yeah, well, we haven't been able to predict any difference in probe behavior for males and females, but we do certainly understand if they have a captive portal where we capture that information is included in part of our metrics. So our DNA Spaces dashboard has an initial digitalization statistics that tell you what are the number of access points that are connecting, the types of updates you've actually received in your network. And all of this information is used to feed the different types of applications you'll see, whether it be different captive portals, different engagement rules, or location persona. Let's look into a couple of them. One is, for example, is behavior metrics. And what you can do with behavior metrics is be able to say, oh, what's the, for a retail customer, what are the average visit duration? What's the average visit frequency? And I can say, hey, this is for my entire network. I know that most people visit 1.6 times a month, but downtown Denver and Philadelphia are have more than the historical average. And these are my least attractive locations, right? So I can start to say, oh, maybe I need to do something different in New York, because the statistics are showing that these are the least valuable locations when it comes to visitor frequency, and the same thing with visitor duration. And so you'll start to see we get the system does this machine learning, and it usually gets 30 days worth of data before it has a very high confidence interval. So we shoot for an over 80% confidence interval in the individual data sets. That has historically occurred after about 30 days worth of data. Before then, you can see your raw data, but we'll say that it's not going to be as complete as when we have a full 30 days worth of data to be able to say what monthly visits, right? We need kind of a month worth of visit to make those estimates.
Shows less visits, for example, in New York, right?
Yes.
It would be nice. What is the reason?
Right, and so that's really what the first business insights will get you is, yeah, we can show you that there's less visits per month in New York, more visits in Miami. Well, then that's where you'll have to say, oh, it's because it's sunny in Miami. It's in the middle of a winter storm in New York, right? The idea of this data set can start to put into other smarter data sets to be able to make really guesses as to why these are occurring. And so that digitization of people, which is we search first hear all the information about what's going on, and then we can create a whole series of rules. And so rules are like engagement rules. So let's do it on this one here. So engagement rules are the ability to be able to do things like, if I have a visitor, I want to welcome that person back. If there's a notify the associate that a high value guest has arrived. And so I can see how that that rule is created, right? So it's literally a GUI creation of a rule that says if a person's on Wi-Fi, he's entered the San Francisco Union area, I can put any particular area. We can select for opted-in users, or in this case, a CRM tag has been created that this is a high profile loyalty customer. And during a particular time range, I could send a text message to a phone number, or it can be anything, that says, hey, a high-profile customer, first name, last name, has just walked in, please welcome them. So this is an example of a rule that can be created to make your business processes easier. But this rule is not just, hey, I can do this cute little test on one thing. I could do this for 3,000 properties, which is occurring now for 400,000 guests. So this solution of a very highly scalable type of rules engine is what we've built here for people. And these rules can also trigger things like trigger APIs. So we can do a JSON post to a digital signage that we've done as part of NRF that says, a little bit of the big brother sort of factor, but depends on some stores that you may want that is, welcome, Darryl, back to a particular store, right? So as I join Wi-Fi, I can get an individualized welcome message. We've seen people being able to think about at restaurants, imagine when they start doing iPad-based menus, this is your individual menu. Here's what you ordered the last time you were here, right? So you can start to really think of how this personalization can begin to occur.
So this kind of thing, I mean, first name, last name, is that then stored in your European or?
Yeah, once they've opted in, they sign in and they opt in and they say, yes, I agree to these terms.
It is opt-ins?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, because I would never opt into anything like that. This is like, I mean, I can see the point of giving you more data points as a business to find out what people want.
Right.
But me, I would come in like an invisibly cloak.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not here. You won't see me.
And some people do that on the web too, right? They can use a browser and hide cookies and not include any cross scripting, and then they get a different experience. Whereas if you allow cookies on the web, you'll get a different experiences. And so
it
it's
has
very
to
similar
stay
like that.
opt-in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise,
So
Or you maybe log in with your Facebook account.
Which I don't have.
yeah, if you don't have any
Many people has, and then anyway, Cisco, Facebook already many times got hacked. So from that data, right, they can.
right.
But you can, just using the MAC address, I guess you can say this is a high loyalty customer.
No,
Or
so you could, but the system is designed so that you select that there's an opt-in user. All we know about the user is that they've joined, and we only are doing these engagements for people who have joined the Wi-Fi.
You mean-
So you've joined the Wi-Fi, and so you've at least done that.
MAC address on
Just to
your phone,
recognize-
for example.
Yeah.
Phone MAC address, for
Yeah.
example.
For example.
If I am changing very frequently. If I am changing very often.
Yeah, you can
You're
change your
lucky.
phones, right? But you log in.
I actually have a question from Twitter. Nick Looper wants to know that although these APs lack the hyperlocation angle of arrival array like the 3702 and the add-on for the 4802, could they do less hyper BLE location?
Yes, they can. With this new USB BLE radio, you can do standard locationing of the individual devices. So it determines based on signal strength, 3 different APs here from different signals, and it can provide a location with a few meters, with about 6 to 7 meter location accuracy.
So would that eliminate the need for like a hyperlocation?
I do not need a hyperlocation array. I can use this USB dongle to detect the location of BLE devices.
All right, there you go, Nick. There's your answer.
Just a quick one. We are here in Europe, and as you hear, everybody is kind of in the mindset of data privacy. And so if you present this to the US, I guess even in retail and so on, the people are much more open with engaging to that? Or how is it in comparison
Well, what we found
between US and
there's 3 places that are really interesting is hotels. People at hotels want to be known. What they want to be, you want to use your guest Wi-Fi. You want to be recognized. You want to be recognized because it's almost like your home away from home. So in hotels, we found a lot of people are opting in. Sports teams, right? So sports teams, I want to join that Wi-Fi because I'm a rabid fan. I want to know that I'm a rabid fan. People really like to say, "Hey, welcome back" as a fan integrations. And so we found that those experiences, sports teams and hotels, are kind of consistent, whether it's Europe or the US, that they're about the same. Retail is one that's a little bit different. Sometimes retailers are more proactive in the US. The Nike stores in the US are much more active about, hey, welcome back to this particular Nike store, where that might be less used in Europe. So I think retail is different, but hospitality and sports is actually more in Europe than it is.
Maybe people forget their data privacy.
when they're really rooting for their team, they want to know it. They might.
Barcelona scores a goal. Is everybody?
Yeah, they all want interactions. They want to be, hey, anyone who's joined the Wi-Fi gets a free whatever or coupon if Barcelona scores a goal. Right? They like that type of interactions. And then so when you view these rules, you get to have a lot of data about these individual rules that happen. And then the other thing is, how did that rule actually trigger, right? In this case, we can say, oh, this rule triggered 700,000 times with these unique users, how they're triggering it, how that rule triggers by the time of day, and how am I notified? So when this rule triggered, was it a text message sent, an email, a push, or an API? Right, and so this is the idea of rules engines about people, and then we also have these same rules engines about things, right? Whether it be USB tags, whether it be laptops, we have the same sort of rules engine. So operational insights is the ability to be able to understand what's going on in my physical space, and I have lots of things in my physical space, whether it be IoT temperature monitors, or I have a lot of iPads and laptops that are used for public usage, and I want to be able to know where they are and what's going on with them. I have the same very high scalable rules engine. So in this rules engine, I've got a similar sort of condition that says Darryl has left the Cisco Live world of solution. For my particular asset, if the location has exited from the Cisco Live, immediately send me a text message that I've left. Right, and so create these types of rules, and these rules can apply against to the individual people or the thing, and so that applies across all of them. And so I think that's really the messaging about digitization of people and spaces. DNA Spaces does this at a very high scale. All of the information is then sort of exported via either APIs into third-party systems as part of our location app store, or you can build applications and sort of experiences inside of the product, right? We've seen both kind of cases really important, that some people want everything to be API driven, but some people are like, yeah, I want to be able to build some stuff natively in the product. And so when we say natively in the product is, I can have an end-to-end system that says, if a temperature of a refrigerator goes above this level, send a text message to Steve, right? And then boom, we've got an end-to-end sort of system that works and provides some definitive value to the customer. All right, that's really what I wanted to talk about with DNA Spaces. And so, our takeaway was that maybe we'll have some of the people at home who asked a great question and has a 2800 would like to get these new USB. These ones are, they don't even have the FCC approval yet, so they're a beta customer, they're beta pieces of equipment. But we've added this as a way of digitizing things. So not only your regular laptops, BLE tags, as well as phones, as well as BLE devices. All of this digitization is part of our overall DNA Spaces. How about that for, my last call to action, because we're last minute, I have this one call to action I was supposed to make sure I talk about was, What are you going to do this? If anybody wants a free trial of DNA Spaces, they can right now go to dnaspaces.cisco.com. Big click free trial in the middle of that bucket, and they can connect their network for 90 days to DNA Spaces and start to take advantage of all of these wonderful capabilities.